Salutations, fellow nerds, I'm Rick Y, and today is March 5th, 2025. As many of you may be wondering what I thought of last night's speech, I'm going to start by disappointing you now. I purposely did not watch it. I wanted to see if my assumptions would be correct, and having seen the transcripts, it appears as though I was right on the money. He was going to get in front of Congress and lie and blame and excuse until he could convince his base of realities that are just not true to form. I also assumed that there may be heckling as there was with Biden's address to Congress, but it appears as though Republicans again have proven themselves to be nothing but a bunch of big old diaper babies, because Al Green was immediately removed from the chambers when he had the audacity to yell that there was no mandate won by Republicans. And he's right. They have a slim majority and Trump won by less than 1.5% of the popular vote. This is called a plurality. It's not a mandate. Since I was certain that it would be another moment for him to dishonor the presidency, I chose to partake in other more meaningful fictional universes. Instead, I'm going to go over an interesting ruling by the Supreme Court because there are glaring inconsistencies that need to be addressed, so as to keep them from being completely looked over. So if you dig news, history, or humorous American hogwash, drop whatever blue symbol in the comment section that doesn't adhere to any far-right ideals. Sorry, Germany, I was unaware that blue hearts were not good things. My bad. Let's get at it. This morning, a ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court went 5-4 against Trump. This ruling was upholding a lower federal court's decision to take on Trump's attempt at freezing USAID. A federal judge found it to be unconstitutional and ordered the administration to release the nearly $2 billion in foreign funds that he had withheld. The funds were for services that were already rendered, as it was to pay for contractors and aid workers for work that had already been done. This was an example on the mountain of examples of Trump refusing to pay his bills and then calling it good negotiation. This was done so because organizations like the AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition and the Journalism Development Network filed a lawsuit and eventually led to U.S. District Judge Amir Ali issuing a temporary restraining order and demanding the government release the funds. This should be relatively understandable as a process because the exact same thing happened to Biden when it came to his student aid forgiveness. For Republicans, for those with short memories, let us recall what went down, shall we? Year was 2022. It's August. Biden announces he will forgive student loans for those who make certain amounts of money per year. The very next month, 6 Republican states filed a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Missouri that challenged its legal authority. The month after that, it was dismissed due to a lack of standing by District Judge Henry Autry. The month after that, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit overturned that decision and granted a temporary injunction, which temporarily halted the program. This is when the Supreme Court chose to step in and agree to hear the case and set a date for oral arguments in the following February of 2023. So not long after that, they heard the case. The Supreme Court issued a 6-3 decision ruling that student loan forgiveness program exceeded the Secretary of Education's authority under the HEROES Act, effectively striking down the program simply due to the amount of money that was involved and it needing to be handled through Congress, as they are the body of government that handles economic decisions. So, what happened this morning? Although the Supreme Court did rule against the Trump administration, it didn't do so without notable dissensions, namely Justice Alito. You see, Alito was really open to judicial interventions blocking executive authority throughout the entirety of Biden's term. He even paused the lower court's ruling that limited Biden officials' contact with tech companies. Yet, while voting in favor of Trump's administration in this case, he specifically argued that there should be more judicial restraint, and essentially stated that lower courts shouldn't try to interfere with executive authority. In his dissent, he suggested, and I quote, "A federal court has many tools to address a party's supposed nonfeasance. Self-aggrandizement of its jurisdiction is not one of them. Indeed, the conservative justices deemed the move judicial hubris, when in fact the courts were doing exactly as they're supposed to function and did so in a manner that the conservative justices seemed more than happy to grant under a president with whom they politically disagree. There was no nuance here that changed this case from the other as far as federal jurisdiction is appropriately enforced. At this point in time, we have on paper the list of justices who will adhere to the will of this administration without a second thought, and they're openly saying that it is due to the fact that they don't believe Trump, above every other executive who has ever held that office, should be questioned by even those authorities that are constitutionally obligated to do so. When it came to Biden, Alito and those who voted with him wanted limited executive authority, and literally within less than 2 years of that ruling have changed their positions and now feel as though any federal judiciary with the gall to challenge Trump is doing so outside of their authority. They're literally holding different judicial opinions based upon who holds power rather than a consistent interpretation of executive authority. And to those of you who think the Supreme Court isn't political, it's time you stop being closed-minded about this. These decisions are not made with a blindfold, but with a clear political bias, and it needs to be called out. There's a pattern with the conservative justices that demonstrate favoritism rather than consistent legal philosophy. When I say that the Republicans do have control over all three branches of the government, no matter how small, this is exactly what I mean. To try and make the claim that conservatives on the court don't practice poor faith decision-making with a clear political lean is naive. This is a dangerous situation wherein Trump really is on the precipice of having full government authority, and the dissents and the lines upon which they've been made betray the fundamental inability to adhere to the standard of blind justice. Interestingly enough, those who betrayed this faith toward Trump over the Constitution were Alito, Thomas, the guy who takes bribes from billionaires, Gorsuch, who is incredibly close to the Federalist Society and is even ruled against free speech cases, and Brett, I like beer Kavanaugh, the latter two having been directly placed in their lifetime positions by Donald Trump himself. Get ready to take into those streets, folks, because it looks like we may have to take back this house on our own. Anyway, if you've hung in there with me this far, I really appreciate it. If you dig what you see, consider liking and subscribing. It is free, and I can't express to you how much it helps the message spread. The algorithm gods are not kind. Anyways, y'all come back now. You hear?